So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how I do a Picot bind off. This Picot bind off is demonstrated on a little piece that's similar to the Currents Cowlette, which is linked in the notes below. And I like to do a bind off like this when I've got a little bit of garter stitch going on the edge. So I've already done some a little bit over here on the side so you can see what the cute little picots look like. And then I'm going to demonstrate how I do it. Now in the Currents Cowlette, we bind off on the wrong side. It's because I want a garter ridge here, the last thing to be a garter ridge. And I find it easier to do it in knit version than in purl version. So when I'm doing my Picot bind off, it'll tell you specifically how many stitches you have to cable cast on and how many stitches you have to bind off. But for this one, I'm going to cable cast on 2 stitches. So for the cable cast on, you take your right hand needle tip and you insert it in between, you see that there, in between the 2 stitches, and then you pull through a loop and then you place it on the left hand needle. And you'll notice it kind of clings to it a little funny, like we're not worried about that at all because we're just going to bind this off in half a second anyhow. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go between the stitch that I just cast on and the stitch that was on the needle, right in between. See how I'm right in between there? And then I'm going to pull a loop and put it on. So I have 2 stitches that I've cable cast on and they look funky and they're all sticking to each other, but like I said, don't worry. So I'm going to knit the first stitch, and I've got a stitch already on my needle that I've knit, so I'm going to bind off the first stitch. I'm going to knit the next stitch and I'm going to bind off, just do that normal slip over bind off, and then I'm going to bind off 4 more. I'm going to bind off the 2 that I cast on, and then 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And then when we turn this around, you can see I've made my awesome little Picot. So let's go through the Picot part again. So we take our right hand needle tip, insert it between the first and second stitches on the left hand needle, and we pull through a loop, place it on the left, go in between that stitch and the other stitch, so between the first and second that are on the left again, but we're using that stitch we just made, pull through a loop, place it on, and then we're just going to bind them off. So we're going to knit the first stitch, and we're going to use that stitch that was already on the needle to bind off, knit the next one, use it to bind off, and then we're just going to do this all the way to this end of this row, because then we're going to see how cute our Picot bind off looks. And that is all that it is to it. We've cast on 2 stitches and then we bound off those 2 stitches immediately in addition to a few more stitches, and that's what spaces them out nicely, and that's how you work a Picot bind off.